We'll get this committee meeting in order. I'm Councilmember Jose Huizar, Chair of the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. We will first hear item 1, which is a joint committee meeting between Planning and Land Use and Management and the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee. For the Planning and Land Use Management Committee, we have myself and Gilbert Cedillo, Councilmember Gil Cedillo, present. And for item number 1, I will now turn it over to Chair of the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee, Councilmember Joe Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, and thank you, sir, for allowing us to take part of this joint Public Works Gang Reduction Committee meeting. As you see this item before you, item number 1, this is an issue that hits close to home for me. I represent one of 2 coastal districts in the city of Los Angeles. I have numerous friends, family members, and neighbors who purchased their homes in large parts of the city because of the beautiful ocean views. I can understand their anger, frustration when they come home from a long day at work and find that their view is now obstructed by a wireless antenna that's sticking out of a utility pole without ever receiving any notification or warning that it'd be installed. However, as someone who uses the iPhone and iPad on a daily basis to be more effective in my job, I would be hypocritical if I didn't recognize that these antennas are absolutely vital to providing reliable wireless service to thousands of Angelenos. I think there's a reasonable path forward that will provide for notification of residents, and that's a key issue, providing notification of residents while also allowing wireless companies enough flexibility to make improvements to their networks and meet increased demand for capacity and coverage. And I see that we have received a number of community impact statements from our neighborhood councils in support of this item moving forward. I would like to call, Mr. Chair, if I may, some of the city staff to come forward. Bureau of Engineering, Planning Department, City Attorney, I have a few questions for them. I believe they're already at the table.
Thank you. Yes, and Mr. Buscaino, Councilmember Buscaino, for the record, we also have on your committee both Gilbert Cedillo is a member of the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee, and we also have present Councilmember Curran Price. And if I could ask our staff to read into the record item number 1, and then we'll proceed.
Thank you.
Sure. Council members, what's before you, item 1, is a city attorney report and a draft ordinance to amend the municipal code to revise the specifications and procedures to install cell towers in the public right-of-way.
Thank you. For the city attorney, can you explain to us what the joint pole agreement is, how it affects the city's ability to regulate wireless antennas on utility poles?
Certainly, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel for the City Attorney's Office. The joint pole agreement is an agreement that a number of different cities and utility companies are members of. The basic purpose or function of the joint pole agreement is to allow utility companies and cities to share the use of utility poles. When poles are shared, there are fewer poles on the streets. If the sharing of poles wasn't facilitated by something like the joint pole agreement, then it would be much more difficult for these entities to install their infrastructure in the public right-of-way. And the California Public Utilities Code gives these entities the legal right to have their equipment in the right-of-way. The joint pole agreement, however, does not limit the city's ability to regulate the installation of telecommunications equipment. So it's subject to that regulation and the ability to regulate.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. We have heard from the wireless industry. They've been. I'd just like for you to respond to their concerns. The wireless industry's contention that subjecting wireless antennas on utility poles to the AGF specifications and procedures while exempting other pole-mounted equipment violates state and federal law. Can you respond to that?
Yes, I do not believe it violates state or federal law. What we are doing in a non-discriminatory way is simply removing the exemption that exists in our current code for any antennas or wireless equipment. It's in response to the outrage and the complaints that people have directed to the city when these items are installed on the poles without any kind of notification. We're not saying that this equipment cannot be installed on the utility poles. We're simply putting it through a process by which the city can exercise its rights to regulate what goes on in the right-of-way. The Public Utilities Code specifically and expressly allows cities to regulate the time, place, and manner for which this equipment is installed in the right-of-way. We're simply exercising our rights to do so.
Very good. Will the wireless antennas on street poles be subject to the AGF? We're
Yes.
talking street light poles.
Oh, on street light poles?
Yes.
No, the installations on street light poles, which are city-owned poles, will continue to be exempt under the AGF ordinance.
And where does the community input lie in that exemption that you just indicated?
Well, I believe the community is generally in favor of allowing the exemption to remain for streetlight poles. As with anything having to do with cell towers, I'm sure there's not unanimity in that view. But I have not received any outpouring of complaints with regard to streetlights like we have regarding utility poles.
Very good.
One reason may be that the installations on streetlights are often much more integrated into the design of the pole, because the streetlight doesn't carry other utility wires and things of that nature. There isn't a need for the cross arms that will pull the antenna out from the pole a number of feet. So it's a much more streamlined approach when the city's streetlights are used compared to utility poles.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. I have a question for both BOE and a planning department question. Any of my colleagues have a question for the city attorney, Mr. Jordan, while he's here?
So what kind of notice is required now for neighbors when these poles are going to go up, devices are going to go on the poles? What kind of notice?
That's a good question. So currently, under the existing ordinance that we have today, if there is going to be something that's mounted on a utility pole, and we define utility pole as a pole that supports transmission wires, there's no notice.
So is that everything but the street light?
No, a street light would be similar. It's exempt. So if you're going to install something on a street light or on it to a utility pole, again, the utility pole supports transmission wires, then with regard to the street light, you have to come to the city and work with the Bureau of Street Lighting,
Right,
because it's their property, and they will work that out. If it's a utility pole, then you go to the owner of the pole. For example, it might be DWP, and you work out the details of the installation pursuant to the provisions in the joint pole agreement. There's no notification to the community, however, because it's not required under our current ordinance. For other AGF installations above ground facilities, be they a cabinet that's on the ground or a monopole, which is a freestanding antenna pole, then the current ordinance does require notification to the adjacent property owner, the properties on either side, and then the properties across the street. So it's a very simple, basic notification pattern.
But that's always been the case, right? I'm sorry. That's always been the case.
That's currently the case. In our current proposed ordinance, based on the instruction from council, we're modifying the notification pattern somewhat, which I can get into details if you'd like.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So under the proposed ordinance, if any facility that needs a variance to go above the height limit, or if it's in a residential area, then you need to notify, well, anything that is a cell tower that's, I'm mixing it up, any facility that requires to be above a certain height, which is basically all of our wireless antennas that exceed our height limit, you need to establish a notification pattern of property owners and residents, which would include tenants in apartment buildings, for 250 feet up and down the street that the site is to be located on. So it's not a 250-foot radius, it's a 250-foot straight line up the street in either direction, up and down the street. We also require notification of any impacted council offices that are within that 250 feet in either direction. Also neighborhood councils and homeowners associations and residents associations. Now, homeowners associations and residents associations, these are not necessarily official entities. They're not necessarily known. So what we do is we ask the AGF applicant to contact the council office to find out about any associations that they're aware of. There's also been some community input on wanting to add community associations. I kind of treat that as the same as a homeowners association, residents associations. These are these kind of unofficial associations of people that have gotten together, and would be happy to revise the ordinance to make it more clear. That's what our intent is. But for these organizations that are not officially recognized, say like a neighborhood council, then we ask the AGF applicant to contact the council office, because oftentimes the council office will know about them. So those people get a notification. If it's a basic cabinet that's on the ground that doesn't require any kind of special variance for its height, then the existing notification remains the same. The adjacent property owner, the properties on either side, and the people across the street. However, we do insist that they notify both the property owner and the resident, because the person living at the house might not own the property.
And just by U.S. mail or sticking it on the door, or how was notice achieved?
That's a good question. What we used to do is talk about registered mail, but we changed it to mail, U.S. mail. Theoretically, it could be more than U.S. mail, but we specifically took out the requirement to be registered mail. Our concern was the ability to actually have these notices received by the people that we're sending them to. It was the specific direction of this committee or the joint committee, that we include residents as well as property owners. For property owners, it's somewhat easy because we can look them up and mail it to the address. But with residents, it may be a tenant. So if we're trying to reach notice to the residents of an apartment building, we felt U.S. mail was the best way, because it doesn't require a signature to receive it. The Bureau's experience was that when things are sent out requiring a signature for receipt, oftentimes they're not signed for, so the notice isn't given.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the notification is all well and good. What happens when the community says, we don't want this antenna up?
So the people that would be within that notification pattern, 250 feet in either direction, the homeowners associations, the community associations, not the neighborhood councils, because they are actually part of the city, those people have the right to file an appeal. So if there is a determination that the application should be granted, they have an opportunity to appeal, and if necessary, have their appeal be heard before the Board of Public Works.
And industry embraces this process.
Pardon?
The industry embraces this process.
Embrace might be too strong a word. I believe that this is something that the industry can accept. We had a lot of discussion about who should have the right to appeal, what the notification pattern should be. It's been our effort in this to create a balanced approach, something that basically asks everybody to give in a little bit.
Is there a fee structure in place in order to appeal?
Yes, I may be
What is
wrong,
that?
so I'm sure the Bureau will correct me. I believe it's $100 to file the fee. We're not increasing any of the fees in this ordinance.
Okay.
However, we did notify the clerk that the California state law provisions regarding fee increases should apply, not because we're raising the fees, which we're not, but because we're removing the exemption. So some people that would ordinarily have not needed to file for a permit will now need to file for the permit. So for that reason, we did it, but we're not raising any of the fees.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Questions for City Attorney before I move on to Bureau of Engineering? Okay.
Ultimately, with respect to
Push the button, Gil.
the appeals and this due process component that's involved, who's the ultimate decision maker?
Well, let me, the ultimate decision maker would be the Board of Public Works. However, there is an opportunity for the public to participate in certain applications, because some of the applications will require the input from the planning department, so the public can do there. But the primary appeal is with the Board of Public Works, because at that point, the entire application is now complete, both in the design of the structure as well as its location. And then, of course, any action by the Board of Public Works is subject to the City Council's ability to assert jurisdiction under Charter Section 245.
ultimately the council has an ability to be the final decision maker?
Well, under Charter Section 245, council can veto an action. That would be the extent of council's role in this.
Okay.
Thank you. A couple questions for Bureau of Engineering. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. BOE, thank you for being here. Can you explain the process from start to finish for an applicant who wishes to install an above-ground facility?
There's two things they have to do first. They have to prove to us that they have a franchise to be in the public right-of-way. Once they do that, when we establish an account for them online, they have to fill out an online application, and then they have to give us hard copies of all the documentation required in the AGF ordinance. Once they hand us the application, we go through it, make sure they have the sign-off by Cultural Affairs, Bureau of Street Lighting if needed, that they provided all the different documentation. We check the notification pattern and see do we have proof of notification for everyone that should have been notified, including HOA, the neighborhood councils, and the council office. Once we have certified that this is a complete application, at that point we open up a work order so that we can charge our time to this application, and we open up what's called a 14-day window, which gives those people who are notified according to the municipal code section that this ordinance is in a chance to either ask questions or to appeal it. If at the end of 14 days there is no appeal, if it does not require board approval, such as a hardship waiver or variance, then the council district that this application is in is notified, and they do a final review and issue the permit. If it requires a hardship waiver or a variance, then a board report is written up asking the board to approve that variance or that hardship waiver. If it is appealed within the 14-day window, we place the application on hold. If it warrants it, we do a site visit out there. We may talk to the appellant, and then once we have our findings, we have an appeal hearing before one of the commissioners on the Board of Public Works. At the present, that is Commissioner Sabo. We get together with Commissioner Sabo, with the applicant, with the appellant, and with staff from BOE. At that point, after everything's heard by the commissioner, he can either render a recommendation to deny, approve, or he can say, I'm not going to issue any recommendation. I want to go before the full board and decide there. Once that is decided, a report is written up and signed by the commissioner and is scheduled before the Board of Public Works. And once that happens, the applicant and the appellants are notified so that they can appear before the board. And it goes before the board, and at that point, a final decision is given.
And as far as impacts of these towers on police and fire radio communication, more of a technical question, you may or may not have an answer to this. What has been done to test, any tests that have been done to ensure that there's no interference with police and fire communication?
Basically, all these different systems operate on a certain bandwidth, and those bandwidths are different. In the case of the different telecom companies, they get their bandwidths from the FCC, and they're all different, so they don't interfere with each other. So it's already known that they won't interfere.
So you mentioned the appeal process, appeal hearing. How is, maybe a question for the planning department, how is the appeal hearing different than the ZA hearing? Or is it the same? Mr. LeGrand?
Mike LeGrand, the planning department. I can explain the ZA process for the hearings and the appeal hearings, but I'd probably defer to the staff of BOE who worked intricately on this ordinance to discuss their process for the AGFs.
Okay.
Would you like me to describe the ZA process?
Yes, the ZA process.
On the ZA process, our initial hearing is a conditional use permit. We have a 500-foot notification. We also send a package to the neighborhood council as soon as it's filed. After the notification of the hearing, there's a 24-day public hearing notice requirement that we get out to all the neighbors and the tenants within 500-foot radius. We hold the public hearing, the zoning administrator makes their decision. That decision then can be appealable to a higher body. Most of the time it goes to the area planning commissions. That again is noticed. And the area planning commission's discretion is to view if the zoning administrator erred or abused their discretion. Since the zoning administrator is an initial decision maker, the appellate body has to step into their shoes to see if they disagree with the zoning administrator in terms of the evidence that was supported their findings. And then it would stop there.
So in this case, it'd be Commissioner Zabo that would make the decision?
Correct.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions for BOE?
Yeah, one last. Once the
I'm sorry, I want to clarify. What was described as the informal hearing process when there's a single commissioner, the single commissioner makes a recommendation, and then the full board, with a public hearing that anyone can come to, they're the ones that make the final decisions.
It's a transparent process, you're saying?
Absolutely.
Right. Thank you, Doug.
So once a pole site has been approved, is it like there forever? I mean, the technology changes and equipment can be changed out interchangeably without coming back for any approvals, or how does that work?
The current ordinance allows the applicants to make changes to their equipment as long as it does not change the volume by greater than 10%. If it changes the volume upwards greater than 10%, they have to come back for a new permit. If it does not, then they can just make the changes. The ordinance also says that if they no longer use the site, it has now become obsolete, that they have to take it down.
If they don't use it for what, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
They have it for as long as that site is active. The permit that is granted has no expiration date unless, like I said, the site becomes shut down and obsolete.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues, before we turn over to public comment? Okay, to respect the time here, I know we have a media agenda on this combined joint special committee meeting. We're going to give each person 1 minute. So we'll give 1 minute per speaker. Sorry, we'll give 1 minute per speaker. If we can, welcome Chris Spitz, and I'll call you 3 at a time, so please line up accordingly. Chris Spitz, Jack Allen, and Paul O'Boyle. Please come forward.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Chris Spitz. I'm an attorney. I'm Vice President of Pacific Palisades Community Council, and I've been working on this issue for over 4 years. I'm here on behalf of PPCC, my council, as well as the West Side Regional Alliance of Councils, which is all 13 councils in the west side of LA. We all support the ordinance, and we urge you to move it forward. In the interest of time, I did submit a packet, but in the interest of time, I'm going to emphasize 2 points that PPCC would like to see amendments to, just 2. One is to increase the notice to a radius of 500 feet, not the inline, but to a radius. And the second is, if you would please be so kind as to add community councils to the paragraph which refers to notice to homeowners associations and residents associations. We're a 40-year-old community council. Brentwood Community Council, which is sitting behind me, is, 30 years old, and we are the council for our neighborhood by choice. We're not certified. So I appreciate your efforts, and I urge you to move it forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jack Allen, welcome. Good afternoon.
Members of the council. I'm Jack Allen, president of the Palisades Preservation Association. I've been working on this ordinance for over 4 years. We're glad to see it get this far. There are a couple of amendments we'd like to see made to it. One of them we'd like to see that, as suggested before, that community councils be added to the list of organizations to be notified. We'd also like to see that a engineer's certificate of load structural safety requirement be added to the ordinance. We understand that the Public Works Department does have a procedure for doing this, but we would like to see it in writing in the ordinance so it's required, it doesn't get forgotten like it did in the county, and that's why we had the Malibu fire, because we had an overloaded pole. I don't know whether the opposition will come from the wireless telecommunications facilities providers, but I would suggest they should support this ordinance, because otherwise, as I've been saying for 4 years, this council can apply its zoning regulations anytime regarding conditional use permits.
Thank you.
For these towers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Paul Boyle?
O'Boyle.
O'Boyle, sorry.
Honorable Chair, before we begin, there has been a speakership submitted by Sonny Nunez, and he would like to defer his time to me. So if it's...
Did he fill out a card?
Yes, he did. Rafael Nunez.
Okay, everyone's just going to get 1 minute. Oh, I see Rafael Nunez. You're coming up.
Okay, so you don't want him to defer to me?
Right.
Okay, fair enough. My name
Can you
is...
start his clock again, please? Thank you.
My name is Paul O'Boyle. I'm an attorney for Crown Castle. I'd like to dispute a few things that were said by the city attorney. The process that's being created is discriminatory. To paraphrase Gertrude Stein, a famous American poet, an antenna is an antenna is an antenna. It shouldn't make a difference who it belongs to. And this ordinance segregates wireless carriers for special treatment. And what it does is it allows the city, or what the city is doing is discriminate against wireless providers from landline providers. What difference does it make if the landline owns the antenna or the wireless does? Now, we've talked to Mr. Jordan about this, and the only reason that this really comes to a head is EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. But you can't do that. The federal law preempts you on that. So when I asked that question, what's the difference between this? The answer was, well, it wasn't RF emissions. So there's some problems there. The city can't pick winners and losers. I have a handout here of some changes to the ordinance that I'd like you to consider that would make the ordinance better as it is.
If you can hand that over, please.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Our next three speakers, Tricia Keene, CD11, Nancy Friedman, and Rafael Nunez.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Nancy Friedman. I'm the chair of the Brentwood Community Council, and I would just like to reiterate that we look forward to approving this ordinance, but we request, so that there's no surprise element to it, that we do get a registered letter and that community councils are recognized, because we are the only people in our area, and Brentwood's a big area, that get the mail from the government. So the community council must be on it. Also, if it could be sent registered mail, we would like that. And finally, to expand the notification area to 500 feet, a circle. That's about 4 tennis courts, so it's not that far. But it includes way more people who would be getting the service or being interrupted by any installation. Thank you very much for all the time you're putting in on this.
Thank you, ma'am. Tricia?
Good afternoon. My name is Tricia Keene. I'm the Director of Planning for Councilmember Bonin. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today and to express our office's support for the proposed above-ground facilities ordinance. This is an ordinance that our office has been working on for quite some time now. Certainly predates me. This ordinance will help to address an issue that is of significant concern in many of our communities and to many of our residents. We support the proposed AGF ordinance with a few clarifications and modifications that we think will help to ensure the potential impacts of above-ground facilities are addressed. First, we do in fact support the elimination of the utility pole exemption for antennas and other wireless communications devices, and would like to see that remain the way that it is in the proposed ordinance. Second, we request that the notification requirement be expanded to include a radius notification, since that is the type of notification that the community members are used to getting throughout the permitting process. So rather than creating an entirely new method of calculating how to provide notice, for example in linear feet, we believe that notice should be provided to a 500-foot radius around the subject property, which is in line with what would be required on other types of similar permits or in projects. Third, we request that community councils be specifically added to the list of homeowner and residents associations, because they perform a similar and important function for giving residents an avenue for communicating input on projects in their communities. And finally, we'd like to make just one technical correction to the notice requirements that deal with adjoining and abutting lots. We request that they be revised to provide for both the noticing of abutting, adjoining, and lot sharing a common corner, so that noticing of property owners across the street from the proposed sites would be clearly included. And so with these modifications, we fully support the AGF, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gave you extra time out of respect for Councilman Bonin's office, and I know these were comments that he expressed to me earlier. Thank you. Rafael Nunez?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Rafael Nunez, Crown Castle. We're just here today to, obviously, we have some concerns over the ordinance proposals, And primarily, it's based on the size of these facilities that you guys intend to regulate. We understand that there's some concern and issue regarding antennas and utility poles. However, we would like to seek some clarification as to what the committee's intent is to achieve with the ordinance, aside from notification, if there's anything else that needs to be addressed with respect to wireless facilities in the right-of-way. And then obviously we're here if you guys have any questions from industry operating in the right-of-way.
Thank you, sir. Our next three speakers, Anita Gabrielian, Kevin Tamaki, and Julia Kuksi.
Thank you. Good afternoon, committee members and members of staff. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this important issue. As you know, the wireless industry has grown exponentially over the last few years. At 32 million here in California, it leads the nation, and LA is at the same pace. We continue to invest proactively. We have invested, in fact, $1.7 billion in the LA area in the last 3 years, and we want to do more. In fact, every year, our planned and approved capital budget is greater than the permits that we're able to process throughout the city. So in fact, because the wireless industry is a key driver of jobs, it is important to the city of LA. It is important to make sure that we facilitate a process that is streamlined, that we together work on an ordinance that makes sense, respects the neighbors, but also allows the wireless industries to continue to invest at a greater speed. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Tamaki.
Good afternoon. Kevin Tamaki, AT&T External Affairs. 4 points. First, we agree with the city attorney's suggestion that exemptions be made for C&M zones and also for small cell technology. Incentivizing industries to do better in terms of sizes, we agree with. Number 3, although we don't embrace the recommended 250-foot, we have a friendly handshake in terms of supporting 250 feet linear. We think that we capture the people that really do need to be captured. And also, the notices would be retained to go to the city council offices, neighbor councils, and hopefully community councils as well, and homeowners associations. Third, aesthetics. We don't agree with the term least intrusive means because that may mean screening and camouflaging, and when you do that, you could create a worse problem by doing that, by calling more attention to the AGF than you would otherwise. Fourth, we also do not agree with the gap in coverage. We think that companies do an investment there, and we do things justifiably.
Thank you, Kevin. Just for a second, Mr. Cedillo has a question for you.
I'm just interested in the objection to the 500 square feet distance. It's somewhat common practice for us. We think that notice is important, and notice is not determinative. It's the procedural due process that we think benefits both the company, let me say this to you, both AT&T and the city, so that we have the full confidence. And I'm not quite sure what is the difference from 250 to 500, given the fact that 250, given the select groups that will be noticed, that notice, I think, in a real way, is going to be beyond 500 feet. And so that to set it at 500 feet, I'm not quite sure what the concerns are.
Yeah, Councilmember Cedillo, the 250-foot distance mirrors the current AGF ordinance of abutting, adjoining, and across the street, and it's worked very well. As a matter of fact, the wireless facilities are under that for monopoles. Monopoles are captured under that notification pattern. And we do think that when you have a radius situation, you may take in some parties that may not even see the AGF. So that's why we have that viewpoint.
Thank you. Julia Kuksi, is that right?
Yes, Kuksi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Verizon supports council and staff direction to provide a notification of 250 linear feet in either direction along the street and aesthetic guidelines to utility poles. However, there's a couple of points. We would ask the Joint Committee to provide an exemption for small cell technology as an alternative to explore an administrative approach for facilities that are no larger than what is customarily placed on utility poles. And there's some examples of that in cities locally. In addition, we ask that an exemption for commercial and industrial zones where facilities will not affect residents, and you eliminate requirements to demonstrate significant gap language from the proposed revisions. We believe incorporating these suggestions will allow Council to meet its goal of exercising more control over the wireless facilities, having an impact on residential neighborhoods, while at the same time accommodate the need to deploy critically needed technology here in Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next few speakers are Edward McGaw, followed by Alexander von Weckmer, and Rick Gallowan.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Appreciate the opportunity to talk this afternoon. My name is Edward McGaw. I'm an assistant general counsel with...
Speak to the mic or raise the mic. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm an assistant general counsel with Verizon Wireless. I just want to make a couple of points. First, with all due respect to my friend, Mr. Jordan, in responding to your question, Councilman Buscaino, about the legality, I think the critical point is whether the equivalent attachments are being treated in an equivalent manner, and we think that the way the amendments are proposed, it's not, all aren't treated equally, so things aren't done in an equivalent manner, which is what's required by Section 7901.1 of the Public Utilities Code. As my colleague Ms. Cooksey noted, we support the notification requirements. We think that the linear requirements coupled with the other notifications will get the notice to the people who will be impacted. We'd suggest that the council consider directing the city attorney to make a few refined, targeted amendments. The small cell technology, provide exemption for that, which will, as already noted, encourage the deployment of this needed technology, but in a smaller manner. The commercial industrial zone exemptions. Thank you.
Alexander von Weckmer.
Yes, my name is Alexander von Weckmer. I'm a board member of the Oaks Homeowners Association. This is an association representing residents in the Hollywood Hills. And what I'm showing to you here is an image of the view of a homeowner in my neighborhood who one day came home, just as you said earlier, and here it was. He had not received any notification for this, and now he does not only see the Hollywood sign, but he also sees an AT&T cell tower. What's important here is under the proposed rules for notification, he still would not be notified. That's why we believe very strongly that the notification should be in a radius, because he lives on a hillside. He lives above this cell site, so the antennas are right in his eyesight. So please consider that. Number two is the wireless industry, the service providers, like to place their equipment in certain locations, preferred locations. And so they cluster all together in one location. So our plea to you is please do not allow a density threshold under 2,000 feet.
Thank you.
For that reason. Thank you.
Rick Gallowan, followed by our last speaker, Barbara Brody. Rick, and good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, my name is Rick Gallivan. I'm representing Sherman Oaks, Get the Cell Out. I can assure you that none of us received notification. It was sent out through registered mail, and none of us received this notice, and I promise you we would have fought this thing tooth and nail. But I just want to say right now that we totally support the Pacific Palisades Community Council in their request to expand notification and certification requirements. I would like to further add that the ordinance include a provision on permit requirements. Current law does not require permit duration limits. Telecommunication companies are given unrestricted authority as to the operation of such installations once a permit has been issued. But if technology changes every 6 months, why would we allow the same ordinance and permits to apply indefinitely? Imposing permit limits to existing and future cell tower installations in the PROW is a recommendation initially made by the city attorney and follows the rulings made in San Francisco. It would allow local government to periodically review compliance of cell tower operations so that the rights and safety of the citizens are protected.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Barbara Brody. Good afternoon.
Thank you. I'm here speaking on behalf of Westwood South of Santa Monica Boulevard homeowners, and I just want to underscore one point, that there should be no exceptions for installation on utility poles. This is too vague an exception that's being sought for small cells, which are somewhat hypothetical at this point, and if they need to be addressed at a later date, you can adopt guidelines and an amendment to the ordinance to address them. In the meanwhile, no exception should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. And then our last speaker is Mr. Hayes. Please come on up. Then we'll close public comment.
Because you voted for it, it's been determined that it's an insidious plot. It's called leave them to their own devices. You voted to pay $41 million of the city's money for a stop for the Crenshaw line at Leimert Park. Altogether, it's going to cost $141 million for a stop that's 2 blocks away from a stop at the Walmart Mall. So why would you do such a thing? Because Leimert Park is a historical site. It has no barbecue pits, has no playground, has no swimming pool, has no recreational activity whatsoever. There are only 5 viable businesses in Leimert Park for $141 million. If you go to the Disney or the pavilion, the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, it's uphill, but there's no stop there. So we want you to use that $141 million and put that train underground so it will not kill anyone trying to cross the tracks.
Thank you, sir. We can bring back up Mr. Jordan from City Attorney's Office. He wanted to share with us a Rule 38 issue in relation to the DWP concerns.
Yes, pursuant to council rules, we transmitted the same draft that we sent to council to a number of different city departments, and we did receive comments back from the Public Works Department, Bureau of Engineering. So if you'll bear with me, I can just go over those comments very briefly. The first comment relates to the areas that we define in the ordinance that require all AGF equipment to be below ground. Those areas include areas covered by the city's specific plans, historic preservation overlay zones, along scenic highways, and there's a number of other areas. Specifically, the comment relates to our requirement that areas adjoining open space zones as defined in the Los Angeles Municipal Code. The Bureau of Engineering's comment was that they would like to have sort of an exception to that below grade requirement if it's an area that's adjacent to a stormwater runoff channel or a flood control channel. My understanding is those areas are shown as open space zones on our maps, and so the BOE has asked that even though they're technically adjacent to the open space, that they not be considered within the below grade requirement. The next comment that I received from the Bureau of Engineering relates to one of our basic AGF application requirements. The current ordinance, consistent with the prior ordinance, says that an AGF applicant may apply for up to 10 AGF installations per permit application. The BOE wants to clarify that so that although there can be multiple pieces of equipment in a single application, that's really only one AGF location per application. So one application might include multiple pieces of equipment, but that's all related to one site. It's not 10 different sites within one application. So the Bureau has asked me to, as part of their comments, to clarify that the ordinance allows for one AGF installation per application. And if necessary, I can send the comments to you in writing. Another comment from the Bureau of Engineering relates to our landscaping requirement. The current draft ordinance requires landscaping to be installed as a way to provide a better aesthetic. This typically applies to a cabinet that's on the ground rather than a pole. They've indicated that in some areas when they look at these applications, the presence of landscaping would be incongruous with the surrounding parkway and what's there already. If there's no landscaping in an area, having a cabinet with a bunch of shrubs around it might, as AT&T pointed out, might make it stand out more. So they've asked that the landscaping requirement could be something that could be waived as a discretionary matter by the board. And they would look at that on a case-by-case basis.
Got it.
The last comment from the Bureau of Engineering. Actually, that may have been it.
That's it?
Hang on a second. I have to look at my Post-it notes here. That's all I have.
Okay.
Also, I would be remiss in bringing up something that I brought up in prior hearings. What we're asking in this ordinance is that an exemption be eliminated, at least in part. The Bureau expects that there will be new applications being processed that they didn't previously have to look at. The increase in workload, they've indicated, as the ordinance is currently written, with the 250-foot notification linear pattern, would require up to an additional full-time equivalent employee within the Bureau in order to process the additional applications that they would anticipate.
What if we change it to a $250 radius?
Well,
does that change the personnel? Or?
I believe it would, but the Bureau of Engineering staff is here to answer that.
BOE here? It's important to strike a balance here. I know we've been working with the wireless communication industry on this.
Yes.
Tell us about if we were to revise the 250-foot linear versus radius, how would that impact personnel?
Just for the record, my name's Jeff Ledoux. Even with a 250-foot linear radius, both sides of the AGF ordinance, we average around 6 or 8 notifications for residents, plus whatever organizations there are. Even with that one, if we're in an area that has high-density condos or apartment buildings, we could end up notifying several thousand people. So, I'm notifying 6 to 8 now, and now I'm going to be notifying hundreds, maybe thousands. Yes, there's a definite impact.
Okay. Well, I think it is a significant impact, but we owe it to the community when it comes to this issue. What I'm going to do, colleagues, if I may, request the city attorney to revise the draft ordinance with the following changes. The changes are as follows. Remove section 62.08. 1D9, which requires applicants to provide a map showing existing gaps in coverage. 2, allow a more limited exemption to remain in place for utility poles located in commercial and industrial areas. 3, allow a more limited exemption for very small antennas and wireless communication devices that are becoming more commercially available, such as small cell technology. And 4, I'd like to revise the 250-foot requirement to change from linear to a radius of 250-foot radius. Colleagues?
I'll second that.
Makes sense. Great.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. No objection on those items? Okay. Any further comments on this item?
Yes, just for clarification, when we revise the ordinance, will you like us to bring it back to this joint committee for further consideration, or will you want us to make those revisions and send them to council? The language regarding the small cell, we'll have to work with folks to develop that language. The other provisions would be very easy to write in.
We'll have the ordinance be directed to council.
Directly
no need
to
come
council.
back to the joint committee. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And we'll work with both our staffs, Buscaino's and myself, and your office and the city attorneys to schedule that item in council. Great. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Buscaino. Mr. Price, that adjourns our joint meeting.
Councilman,
yes.
the question has surfaced whether a vote was actually taken.
Pardon me?
Whether a vote was actually taken by the
Yes,
joint
there was
committee?
there was no objection.
No objection.
There was no objection. That means all the council members voted aye. You got vote from both committees. And so with that, we'll go to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee.
Sure.
And if we could go to item number 2, please.
Item 2, Councilman, is a motion by Council Members Price and Labange asking for several amendments relative to the proposal to functionally transfer development services programs from various city departments to a new development services department, and as well as a verbal status report.
Great, thank you very much. And do we have is the CAO's office here in CLA, CAO? CAO? Okay. Is and the consultant is here as well?
Yes.
From Matrix? Okay. We have the CAO and the consultant from Matrix here. This motion has been presented by Mr. Price, and I think we have them. Is anybody here from Mr. Price's office? Okay. Okay. So with that, let me ask if I could ask the CAO a few questions, and we have a number of speakers. We could probably go a minute each. And where are we in this process of, as originally proposed by the original motion of consolidation?
Jason Clean, Office of the CEO. By and large, Matrix has completed their analysis of development services as it exists currently within the city. They've also completed their peer city review, and we're wrapping up with our stakeholder outreach. We've met with not only internal city staff, but we've also met with residents, neighborhood councils, and individuals in the business industries. Where we're at right now is we're waiting for the motion to actually get through the policy consideration process. Our office has committed to not releasing our final report until this motion has been resolved at the council level. We don't want to release multiple reports which have conflicting recommendations. Originally, the budget process assumed that functional integration would occur on January 1st. This motion would postpone the functional transfer of employees from their existing departments to the new department until next fiscal year. And a date has not been established, and it would also allow Matrix to make recommendations outside of what was adopted in the budget.
Okay. And so the consultant, along with you and everyone else working on this, is working with the motion to say we are moving forward with consolidation. This motion cites the need to slow down the process, that perhaps it's too quick. I mean, you guys are just doing what the council asked, but do you have an opinion as to whether we can, if we consolidate, successfully do that by January 1st?
I'll let Gary speak from his perspective first, and then I'll speak on behalf of the city process.
Okay.
Gary Golitz, Matrix Consulting Group. The answer to your question is no.
No. So it won't successfully be implemented by January 1st?
Not possible.
Not
Depending
possible.
upon how you define success. I mean,
Okay.
can you start the process on January 1st? Absolutely. But can you have all the departments functionally integrated with all the staff co-located, the ordinances adopted, the job classifications revised by January 1st? I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting you don't start the process, but I'm just suggesting to expect the end of the process on January 1st is a little unrealistic.
Okay. And based upon your stakeholder meetings and all the fact-finding you've been doing and observations, you know, there are different options and alternatives to improving the current system that we have. And do you believe you have all the options, or have prepared to provide your best recommendations on improving these services, and all the options are available for your recommendation?
I am focused on the council policy adopted on May 29th of 2013, which basically said we are going to functionally integrate these 5 departments.
And in this process, have you found other alternatives other than consolidation
Yes,
that could help?
yes.
Okay. And what? Like what? Like
Pardon me?
what? What else can we be doing to improve these services? Other than consolidation.
There are a variety of alternatives available to the city, leading to and including full consolidation of these services. Full consolidation of the organizational structure is just one of the elements that I believe the city needs to take to resolve the numerous problems it has with its development services right now.
Okay.
Part of the other issues you're dealing with already, for example, technology, you're dealing with Build LA already. Policies, you're involved with Recode LA already, and you're updating some of your community plans, although I might argue you need to do more on that in that nature. Your processes I would describe as extremely cumbersome and convoluted, and consolidating the organizational structure won't resolve that problem. It'll provide the organizational structure to start dealing with it, but organizational consolidation alone won't deal with those kinds of problems. And I would define the process problems and the lack of process ownership as central to resolution of these problems, along with functional integration of these functions.
And in your current research, have you gathered enough information to look at the pros and cons of consolidation?
Yes?
Would you provide that in your report?
Yes?
And so you've been directed to implement, so you would only provide the pros and not the cons?
No, the pros and cons will be there, but
They'll
there's
be
only
there.
going to be one alternative, and that is consolidation.
But there's only one alternative?
Yes.
Okay. So you're providing us,
Organizational alternative.
yeah, so you're providing us the pros and cons, but you're telling us what the recommendation should be, as opposed to us analyzing what the pros and cons are and then moving forward as to whether what makes best.
I have
Most
a
sense.
policy parameter adopted May 29th, 2013 that basically says there will be functional integration. That's the policy that I'm working with as adopted by council on that date. Does that prescribe me from talking about the pros and cons of that particular policy? No. I can and I am defining the pros and cons, and there are both pros and there are both cons. I would say the pros outnumber the cons, but I will define both the pros and cons of full functional integration.
Okay. Thank you very much. So to summarize some of the questions I've asked, number one, you don't think we could successfully implement consolidation by January 1st?
No, I do not.
Okay. Secondly, you've already analyzed the pros and cons of whether consolidation makes sense, and you will present that in your report, but you are recommending
Not recommending.
we're going to move forward with, we're executing without you recommending to us and doing an analysis of those pros and cons.
I am fulfilling council policy, which was functional
Got it.
integration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Don't go away.
Councilmember Huizar, can I just chime in? Terry Kaufman, Macias City Attorney's Office. City Attorney is also operating under the deadline set forth in Exhibit H to the budget, which directed our office to prepare an ordinance by October 31st.
Yeah.
We're doing that, but what I'm hearing and what I've heard all along is we're not really ready to do that. We don't have all the details worked out. We don't have a report. So we're going forward with what we think is appropriate, but it may not be. And, we have to meet that deadline unless somebody makes a motion to put that off. So if council is considering delaying other things to meet a different budget deadline, then I would request that you include the city attorney's work in that. Because we're at October 8th, and we're going to be done with something. I don't know, if anybody's going to use it, so you should consider that as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then,
I want to go back to the consultant.
okay. Do you have anything to add? Mr. Cedillo has some questions for the consultant.
I was just going to add that from a functional standpoint, it would take about 2 to 3 months to actually establish the new department, to establish the classifications for the general manager and the assistant general manager, to do the salary settings for the new classification, and give the mayor the opportunity to find an executive for this new department. But you also have to deal with the human factor, which we haven't begun to deal with yet, and that's to have the personnel department sit down with the employees and actually talk to them about what functional integration is actually going to look like and what that is going to mean to them. I mean, at this point, you have employees on both sides who feel that functional integration is not going to move forward, and you have employees that think that functional integration is going to move forward. And once the policy decision is reconfirmed, the personnel department does have to step in and have workshops with the employees and get them prepared for functional integration. And that cannot occur before January 1st. To the expectation that we functionally integrate, we can start moving the process forward, establishing the new department and going through the city process of finding out whether or not we have staff to do the geo teams that Matrix is going to recommend, how staff would be co-located, where the employees would fit within the new organization, setting up the financial infrastructure, the accounting infrastructure, and the HR infrastructure for the new departments. These are all things we have to do before we actually functionally transfer the employees to the new department. And those are all things that we would be doing between now and next fiscal year in preparation for functional integration. So functional integration wouldn't die by postponing the functional transfer to next fiscal year. It's just postponing when we actually move people to the new department.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Cedillo, and I understand we have Mr. Labange here. We'll go to Mr. Cedillo first and then to Mr. Labange.
Sir, let me be very candid with you. I like you. I like your work. You're straightforward, straight shooter, and I appreciate that. I'm a new member, so I didn't move this agenda. I didn't move this motion. And I don't know if I speak for my other colleagues who are new to the council, but this is new to us. And I see this as a very major transformation, that the efforts to bring institutions together, departments together, is very complicated. And it's not something that you do freely, easily, and it's not something that you can do arbitrarily. And so what I see, and with all due respect to my colleagues, that the motion was somewhat arbitrary, that there was a conclusion already in place, and then there was a time certain in place. And I appreciate that. It helps. It's always good to work with goals. But I don't think that the directive was fair. I don't think it was fair to the consultant or fair to the city workforce, fair to the city of Los Angeles, fair to anyone, because it was predetermined. And so what I would ask and what I would like is you to have the freedom to have a fuller reign here. Do the pros and cons, do the assessments, do the timetables, think about the cultural changes. We had this conversation in another committee. I think this is really difficult. I've been listening to workers in different committees. This process is very difficult for the workforce. And it's not clear. There is not clarity about what functional integration will look like. And that's important to working men and women in both departments. They've got plans to make. They've made choices in the past about where they're going to work. And now it's unclear about what that means, these changes. So I'd like to give you a broader range, a broader mandate as we move for this extension. Because I think the city would be better served if you're allowed to do all the aspects of what your skill set seems to indicate that you're capable of doing for the city.
If that is council motion and adopted by council, I certainly work within that policy. Right now, I'm working with a policy that was adopted in May, and I really can't do anything except other than follow that policy.
I understand. And I appreciate that. I would also add, Mr. Chairman, if I may, that we should amend this motion so that it does include the city attorney and all other related departments that have been involved in trying to accommodate this. I'm sure there's others who are standing by to figure out how this relates to them throughout the city family and the city infrastructure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Labange.
Here's history.
Here's history.
Matters. History
Talk
matters.
about history. I was thinking of the Department of Water and Power. It used to be in Public Works, the water system, and then there was the Department of Power and Light. And there's still a building in your district on Beaudry that still has that image in there. Then I was also thinking about aircraft that is being built whether it's in Seattle or when looking at the space shuttle. I took my family there on Sunday at the Exposition Park, the Science Center. The time it took to put it all together to make sure it flew safely and returned, all that time. And I hear the city attorney speak about time and what the ordinance is. We want to do whatever we do right. Information is knowledge is power. And planning is the highest accelerant, planning issues, building issues, the highest accelerant of neighborhood concerns than any other issue other than a tragedy that takes place, such as a horrific criminal or accident in a neighborhood. Constant planning is so key. And the planning department's done a tremendous job in opening up the information and knowledge, the ZEMAS, all the work they have done. But I just want to make sure we do it right, and I don't want to be pushed more than we have to make sure that we do it right and integrate. I also want us, the consultant, if I could, Mr. Chair, ask that they look at other cities in the county as well as in the SCAG area that would reflect a similarity. What does Pasadena do? If you talk to anybody live in Pasadena here? Do you like Pasadena?
Yes, I do.
Pretty special? Do they have a building department?
Yes, I
do. Do they have a planning department?
They have a community development department.
Okay, so that's good to know. Community development that works together. So that's a good thing to look at some of those, because I want to look at that before we make a big decision. Safety is the number one issue when it comes to the people that we protect, whether it's public safety in the street or safety in a building. And neighborhood planning is so important. And the steps that have been taking place the last years have really done a good thing. So I would just say that it's important that the consultant be allowed not to study just the consolidation, but also alternative solutions to the development services to make sure we're doing it right, Michael. To make sure that we're doing it right. How can we do it better where people feel, okay, I'm going to do business in Los Angeles. I'm not going to have that many hurdles to jump over. I'm going to make sure it's done right. And take the time that's necessary. I'm not in a hurry. I'm in a hurry to get it done right. And so whatever that may be. So I thank you, and I wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Labange. You're always welcome in this committee, Mr. Labange. We have about 30 public speaker cards, and we're going to have a minute for each public speaker. I'll call two up at a time. They've been waiting for what? Okay. So the first person is Andrew Longoria and Nicole Shanian.
Good afternoon, Honorable Commissioners. I'm Andrew Longoria. I'm a proud EAA member, and I'm also a long-term city employee, but today I'm here to represent myself on my own time as a native Angelino, and very concerned about the actions that are being taken and the motion before. I applaud Tom Labange's and all the council members' assessment of this, and I fully support the motion to gain all the information necessary so we take the best actions to serve the public in the best light, and I believe that's part of what this motion does, so I wanted to express my support of this motion. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Nicole Shahinian and then Jack Allen.
Good afternoon, Nicole Shahinian with the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber and its 900 members, I'm here to express the Chamber's concern with this motion to hold off on consolidation of the Planning Department and Building and Safety until other alternatives can be considered. The Chamber has been a strong supporter of the consolidation of city services under a new department. We've stated time and again that a creative and business-friendly initiative like this is precisely what the city needs to drive economic growth. The Hollywood Chamber has helped build one of the strongest business communities in LA, and we view the streamlined department as a great tool for continued efforts to bring new business and new jobs to the city. As you are well aware, the city has already spent $850,000 between the Development Reform Strategic Plan and the consultants recently retained to study the implementation. The consultant's report, as he said, is due any day. As we understand it, this motion is asking for implementation and financial analysis of other options available to the city. This process will require a new RFP and more taxpayer money and more valuable time. We ask that you withdraw this motion and move forward with implementation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for the record, this motion would not require a new RFP. Just to make it that clear. Jack Allen and Hugo Aguilar.
Thank you, members of the council. Jack Allen again. My association opposes the consolidation and would like you to study alternatives. I've submitted to you a 5-page memorandum that sets forth the reasons why we are opposed to it, and we've studied the pros and cons. First of all, we don't believe the charter permits it. Section 500 of the charter establishes the planning department. There's nothing in the charter that would allow the council to, by ordinance, consolidate that department with any other department. And I've studied all the charter cities that are listed in the staff report. None of them had a provision in their charter similar to what we have in our charter. And the city of Dallas, in fact, amended their charter to provide for the consolidation of the departments. As a city attorney, I served in 2 cities that had consolidated departments. They did nothing but establish another layer of bureaucracy, and the only reason that they did it was not to improve the construction or the development permit process, but because they wanted to put control, an additional level of control over the departments by having an assistant city manager run those departments. And that's what almost all these cities did. That wasn't improved. They didn't do one thing to improve the processing. That can be done without consolidating.
Thank you. Hugo Aguilar, Richard Sanchez.
Good afternoon, members of the council and staff members. My name is Hugo Aguilar. I am a staff member with IAPMO. I am here to state that IAPMO is in support of delaying the original May 2013 motion. We feel that further research should be conducted to determine other options that the city may have other than consolidating the departments of building and safety and planning. Thank you.
Richard Sanchez, Brian Folb.
Good afternoon. My name is Richard Sanchez. I've been instructed to represent the Engineers and Architects Association and their members. First of all, I want to start off by saying that we neither oppose nor do we support the current proposition. Having said that, we do want to applaud Mr. Cedillo and Mr. Price's amendment, Mr. Price and Mr. Labange's amendment. The amendment will allow the council to identify the delays in the permit process. Once the delays are identified, the council can then develop the best method to address the delays. Once properly vetted and the best solution to fix the permit process is developed, then the EAA can possibly support the position. I do want to bring to the consultant said something very important. His instructions were to find the best way to implement the current proposal. What he's also said is he has found other ways, but that was not his instruction, so he's not bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Folb, Dominic Rubalcaba.
Good afternoon, committee members. Brian Folb. I'm on the board of the Hollywood Chamber. I'm here as a citizen and property owner in Hollywood. I feel that it's important to get it right, as Councilmember Labange states, but it's also important to put some deadlines on the process and to move the process forward. We've been going for many, many, many years with an antiquated system of working with planning and the building department. So I urge the committee to move it forward. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to need to, you can't dot every I and cross every T, but we do need to move it forward and automate our departments and do it in a way as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominic Rubalcaba, Alfred Hernandez.
Council members, thank you for the opportunity. I am speaking on behalf of myself. I've been around the city for about 36, 37 years. I've participated at different levels, as most of you know. I think this is a really important decision that requires serious consideration and serious deliberation, and, quite frankly, a little bit of courtesy. I think Mr. Cedillo mentioned it. You have 7 new council members, 7 council members that were elected after that decision in May. 7 council members that represent approximately half of the city of Los Angeles. If their voices are not heard, half of the city is not being heard on this issue. This is really important. You've heard the adage, measure 5 times, cut once in construction. That's appropriate here. This is really, really important for good decision-making and good government. You will be judged by how you act and the decisions you make. Just one more thing. I think it's really important also, and I'm on the record against the consolidation. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't have enough time to go through all that. I apologize. I will be available to any of you to share my ideas with you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Alfred Hernandez, Johnny Utronic. You have some fans here, Mr. Rubalcaba.
Good afternoon. I'm Al Hernandez. I represent Fire Protection Group business here in Los Angeles. I also used to be the assistant fire marshal here for the city of Los Angeles, so I've been on both sides of the counters. And I'm here to tell you that I've heard some common sense today. Councilman Cedillo talks about the people that are going to be involved in part of this process and the change that's going to be forced upon them. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good change. The other part is Tom LaBonge. He just scratched upon the surface of what I wanted to talk about. It's public safety. Planning is a political process. Building department, fire department, their number one responsibility is public safety. You propose to mix both, and I say a jack of all trades is a master of none. So I support the motion to amend the contract. Thank you.
Thank you. Johnny, that is a Y, right? Utronic, and then Pharrell Stevens.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Johnny Utrinich. I'm the president of the MCIA, which is the Inspectors Union. We represent the senior inspectors, assistant inspectors at the Department of Building and Safety, and 800 inspectors throughout the entire city of Los Angeles. We'd like you to consider this motion. We are in favor of slowing this down. There just really isn't enough time. I met with the consultant. We gave our concerns, but according to the timeline, between the time of the draft, there would have been a 1-week period for us to get our input before it went to the council, and that is really not enough time to do something as serious as this. Let's give the consultant the tools that he needs to expand this and not be constrained by the original ordinance. Let him look at this objectively and give a prudent solution and give options to the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pharrell Stevens, David Young.
I'm Pharrell Stevens. I'm a general contractor in the city of Los Angeles. We do a lot of work with this city. You have a wonderful building department. We've seen a lot of changes in the last 4 or 5 years. Things seem to be moving along. We're extremely happy with the way it is. We believe that there is room for improvement. We are for the motion to continue the study. I've never baked a cake in 10 minutes. It takes time. So I would like you to get it right for everyone's sake. I have 500 employees or 500 families that my firm supports, and it's important to them. So I'm hoping it's important to you. Thank you.
Thank you. David Young.
Hi, my name is David
Gary
Young.
Tamberger.
I'm a subcontractor here in LA, and I'm here to support the notion for a further expanded study of the Building and Safety Department. And I just don't support the goal of consolidating together. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Tamberger and Jeff Fultance.
Hi, I'm Gary Tumberger. I am a general contractor in the greater Los Angeles area. We are here also to support the motion. We would like to see the amendment approved so that we could go through and the consultant and the city could actually really think about what's being done when they consolidate these two departments, if that's what they're planning on doing. From what the consultant said, there's other options. I think the other options need to be looked at. Right now, the way that the building department works, we don't have any problems going through and getting our permits pulled. We believe that it's working properly, and there is always room for improvement. But the consolidation process needs to really be looked at and further reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Fultance and Sina Khalili.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Fogeltance. I'm the CEO of Fogeltance Electric, and I oppose consolidation.
I'm here to voice my support for the motion of an expanded study of the current building and safety operations as they are now. I appreciate the current system that allows for a same-day over-the-counter plan check review. Any change to this process by adding another division to review will only add delays to the current permitting process at an unneeded cost to building owners and tenants. Thank you.
Thank you. Sina Khalili, it's Zach Waltfrio.
Hi, my name is Sina Khalili. I'm representing Turbo Chilled Air Conditioning. We're mechanical subcontractors. I support the motion for building and safety. Our company has been working in the greater Los Angeles County for the past 23 years. We like the way building and safety is operating and would love to see improvements. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Eastack and William McCoy.
Hi, my name is Yitzhak Waldfried. I represent Ike Plumbing, and I'm a plumbing contractor for over 20 years in the city of Los Angeles, and I'm support the motion of building and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. William McCoy and Karin Izumi.
Hi, my name is William McCaughey. I represent Air Builders Incorporated. We're an HVAC subcontractor. We support the motion. If we had to put, we do primarily tenant improvement jobs or small jobs, so we're not doing any restructuring of buildings, anything like that. Small jobs, and it's a cash flow in a small business. And so we'd like to leave it how it is, so we can get through this permit processing and keep our small business running. Thanks.
Thank you. Karin Izumi, and then Stanley Izumi.
Hi, my name is Karen Izumi, and I am the first vice president of the MCIA, which represents the construction inspectors in the city of Los Angeles. We are in favor of this motion to include all other options. I believe that it is important to look at the individual department's ability to become more efficient so Los Angeles can become more business friendly. Therefore, we hope you allow the consultant more latitude to conduct their analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Stanley Izumi, Javier Alipio.
Stanley Izumi, glad to be able to address the board. I'm also a building inspector with Building and Safety, and I support the motion to amend the motion to give the consultant more latitude to expand his research. Thank you.
Thank you. Javier Alipio, Michael Hunt.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for letting me come before your presence. I'd just like to say that I am the second vice president of the MCIA, and that we do represent about 800 inspectors. And I'd like to say that we're for the motion. Like Mr. Tom Labange said, they want to work on it and let the consultant work on his magic and help hopefully both departments maybe become different entities. They don't really have to be a viable realignment with other options. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Hunt, Teresa Abraham.
Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm opposed to, I'm in support of Mr. Price's amendment and Councilmember Labange to delay this process and do a further study. I believe that Matrix was hired to say how to implement this rather than does implementation make sense. Also, what the budgets are. I think Matrix needs to be afforded the time to be able to come back to you and tell you what the fiscal cost of this is going to be. I'm a construction company of less than 50 people. I've been able in the last couple of years to grow to start growing my company back because of the efficiencies of the Department of Building and Safety. I would also like to recommend that Matrix looks at surrounding cities and see where they combine their departments to show that this isn't broken. It's working rather well. I think they'd be very happy to find out how well it works. So thank you for your support of this extensive review and cost analysis. I truly believe you'll be proud to see how well DBS is ran. I look forward to the changes that are coming in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Abraham, Adrian Buchanan.
Hi, good afternoon. We all recognize that customer service is very important. It's paramount. And we all appreciate the passion to try to make the development industry, the service better. But that being said, this new motion will allow the consultants to appropriately look at all the options and define what truly will improve services to that industry. We hope you agree that by expanding this study, we will learn the best method to improve our services and thereby have a better chance of achieving our goals. I respectfully ask that this motion be set forth for further study.
Great, thank you. Adrian Buchanan, Will Wright.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian Buchanan, and I am a stakeholder in the City of Los Angeles for the Department of Building and Safety and also the Secretary of ASME Local 3090. What concerns me is that we still have no answers for our customers that we serve or for the members that I represent. Now, what actually are the problems that the new department is supposed to change? Now, I truly believe in change, but is this functional transfer the right fit for the taxpayers that we serve? Being that the merger will destroy the services that we perform in the Department of Building and Safety, is an important enough reason why more studies are needed in order to make certain that merging two large departments with different missions is the right fit for the City of Los Angeles constituents. Now, as I said again, I truly believe in change, but so far, I am not convinced that the constituents will continue to receive all of the necessary services to keep the city safe if more studies are not performed. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Wright. Jonathan Adler.
Good afternoon. My name is Will Wright. I work for the American Institute of Architects, and I want to take a minute to just take a deep breath and say thank you for your leadership and patience on this. This is something we've been working for 2-3 years on. This is a very important way to move the city forward. I think to clarify, this isn't really an us versus them situation. This is really a we situation. How do we make this the best city we can possibly make? I think the efforts that are going on right now are healthy. It's an outreach process that we've been involved with from the start. We welcome to be continued to be consulted with how to move this forward. I think the fact that the previous speaker did say that there's 2 missions, I think that right there could be where we could begin. We have 1 mission as a city. And so I think we should all work together on that 1 mission and get rid of the silo effect and actually look at who's at stake here. It's the people of Los Angeles that live here. How can we make this operate more efficiently, effectively, healthier, more sustainably? Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Adler. Dolores Spears.
I'm Jonathan Adler, but I believe I'm a speaker on another matter, not on this issue.
Pardon me?
I believe I'm a speaker on another issue, not this matter.
Okay. We'll look into that. You're Jonathan Adler? Oh, yeah, you were put in the 3 pile. Sorry about that. Dolores Spears and Tina Hossein.
Good afternoon. Dolores Spears from AFSCME District Council 36. And in a meeting early on with labor organizations, the question was asked with regards to this consolidation, what were the problems and could the problems be fixed? And management did not have an answer. And so the Coalition of LA City Unions sent a letter in support of the Price-LaBonge motion that the council action be amended, and we're still in support of that. And in listening to the consultant in response to you, I believe what I can appreciate was he was straightforward in his answers, but it leads me to believe even stronger that this council action needs to be delayed and other alternatives be looked at. Thank you very much.
Tina Hossein, Chava Denise.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Tina Hossein. I'm here representing the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce and our 1,600 members. My business community colleagues at the Valley Industry and Commerce Association and the Building Industry Association were not able to be here today, so my comments also reflect their positions. We support and acknowledge the important steps taken to increase efficiency, accountability, and certainty in the city's development process through this proposal to create a new Department of City Planning and Development. The development community desperately needs real relief and streamlining of permitting and development processes. And as such, the Chamber, VICA, and BIA have all submitted written recommendations and participated in meetings with the city's consultant group. We are anxiously awaiting public review of the consultant's report back and encourage the council to wait until then to make a decision on the consolidation. The city has already spent $850,000 on studies to improve the city's development process, and we should leverage the recommendations and findings from these investments without starting the process over. Once the consultant's report is out, I encourage the council and planning department to meaningfully engage the business community for feedback. We appreciate the council's interest in getting this consolidation right, and we look forward to working with you on its structure, functions, and implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Chava Danese, did I say that correctly? Barbara Brody.
Good afternoon. I'm Hava Danielson, and I'm an architect, and I'm also the current chair of, excuse the handwriting, current chair of the Political Outreach Committee of the AIA Los Angeles. I'm here not really to speak to the timing issue. I defer to the consultant and to people with more expertise than I in that. But I'm here to make general comments in support of consolidation. The development community and the development process is desperately in need of clarity, predictability, consistency, and coherence in the process from the beginning through the end. As our city grows, as projects are larger and more complex, right? They need a kind of overarching leadership from the beginning of the process through the end of it. In addition, as our city looks to become more sustainable and develop in different ways, we need innovation, such as the Small Lots Ordinance that requires cross-jurisdictional thinking. And we look forward to all of those in a consolidated department that can speak to us with one voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Barbara Brody and Fred Balderrama is our last speaker.
Barbara Brody, thank you. We would echo the comments of this last speaker and of Will Wright. We have some great employees in the city, in building department and in planning departments, but let's face it, without rose-colored glasses, the truth of the matter is we're dysfunctional. We have litigation, we have project appeals, we have all kinds of bottlenecks, we have problems. And I'm afraid that by delaying the process, we are allowing people to undermine this process and believe that delay will kill it. Somehow, if we just stop the clock, we can undermine this process enough and wedge it enough politically to stop it. And I think this council, whether you adopt the motion or not, needs to reaffirm your commitment to a change in how we do business, whether it's through merged department or whether it's through some different structure, management style. There has to be a commitment from you to say we are changing, not for change's sake, but because change is needed, change is necessary, and our culture needs to evolve. You can't legislate a change in culture, but that's what you have to lead, because we know we can and we must be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Fred Balderrama.
Honorable council members, for the last 25 years, I have proudly served as a Los Angeles County Economy Efficiency Commissioner. My duties included reviewing all aspects of local government, policy, management, and operations, and reporting to the Board of Supervisors our committee's findings. I remember when there was push to consolidate the county's Internal Services Department with the Public Works Department, and Health Services with the Public Health Department, and the Natural History Museum with the Beaches and Harbor Department. However, instead of consolidation, our committee, through careful analysis, recommended to the Board of Supervisors thoughtful and practical solutions to increase efficiency to each department. We could do the same with the city planning and building and safety departments. Resolving specific issues with each department is simpler and more cost-effective than consolidation. Working together, we can make the city of Los Angeles more efficient, responsive, and business-friendly. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And first, I want to thank everyone who came out to participate in this. As a few of the public speakers mentioned, this is a very important decision. And I want to thank my committee member and colleague on the council, Councilmember Englander, who put forward a motion this past January to really initiate a consolidation of development and review functions. I'd also want to thank Council Members Price and LaBonge for weighing in with their motion on the speed and process for undertaking this important realignment of city services. And as many of you know, we've been talking about this merger for many, many years, at least since 2008. And I actually authored 2 motions to do just that, to consolidate these departments back in 2009, but it never really took hold. I supported and continue to support all the efforts that have been made to improve our development process, and particularly those that were proposed by Mayor Villaraigosa in his Development Reform Strategic Plan in 2010-2011, when the city brought in an outside consultant to audit our development processes. And the full City Council adopted the strategic plan in July of 2011. This strategic plan resulted in several zoning code simplification ordinances and the establishment of the multi-departmental case management office at FIG Plaza. Further, the city is undertaking 3 interrelated efforts to reform our development reform system, including the comprehensive zoning code revision and the Downtown LA Development Code Work Program. It is also undertaking the Under Development Build LA combined web portal and the realignment of departmental development review functions. I've been a member now of Plum Committee for 7 years, and I think this is a good way to continue to improve our development processes for the city of Los Angeles. And I've been involved with all these efforts to reform, streamline, and improve the city service delivery valet's development review functions for all these years. And almost no issue is more important, I think, to my office and to many people in this city as a priority to develop a world-class development review that we all deserve here in the city of LA. And I firmly believe that such a system will improve the type of development we see in the city and help us to build the city that we want. So at first, when I was somewhat concerned about slowing down the process that we put in motion as we heard our quarterly updates on the effort to consolidate. I was a bit concerned that slowing down the process will actually kill a process that was started to improve our development services. But after speaking with colleagues, with departments, with the consultant, I very much want to ensure that we move forward thoughtfully and deliberately. One thing is certain, this cannot happen by January 1st. Our CAO has said that, our own consultant who's doing the process has said that, and we want to make sure that if we do it right. 2 things that this motion is asking for is 1, to slow down the process to January of 2014. It's not saying to kill it, it's saying slow it down, let's do it right. That question, that proposal in that motion, it was answered for us today. The people who are doing it cannot do it by January 1st. So for that part of the motion, I think Mr. Price and Mr. Labange are correct. But we know we are also asking to let the consultant be as flexible as he can be. I think Mr. Cedillo was correct in saying that we have a consultant who speaks direct, who I think knows the processes, knows what he's talking about, and several times I've seen him speak here in this committee and our own meetings, I have much respect for his work and his approach. The second part of this motion is simply asking, let him have at his disposal all the possible tools that he can recommend to this city as to what's the best way to go forward. It's not saying keep consolidation off the table. Don't do that. It's just saying, you know what, instead of just directing you to do consolidation, analyze the pros and cons. Tell us if that's the right thing to do. We do not have that analysis as of yet. We're skipping a point in policy formulation by us not having the analysis as to whether it's the right thing to do or not. We simply jump to a conclusion in this process. We're simply telling him, hey, is this the right thing to do or not? And you know what? If he comes back and he says, and he recommends, and then the city council and this committee deliberates and says, well, we still want to do consolidation because we've analyzed, we've reviewed, and it does make sense to move forward with consolidation, so be it. But we at least need that analysis, and we owe it to our constituents to know that we are working with facts and making decisions on the best information available to us. And we all know that realignment alone won't solve all of the city's problems regarding development review. We have to make appropriate investment in technology through the Build LA program. We must finish the comprehensive zone code reform program and update our community plans, and I'm sure those are items that this consultant is looking at. We must focus on processes, people, and resources to ensure that we are making the most of what we have and making smart investments. Therefore, with such considerations in mind, I'm willing to support this motion. It essentially calls for a 7-month postponement in implementation to ensure that we are defining what success is and not just rushing forward to it with one critical element, which is the analysis as to what that success may be like. Further, I'd support giving the consultant some broader leeway in making recommendations outside of the scope of the contract as written now, and that's the second part of the motion. I'd like to hear Matrix thoughts on how to achieve the goals that are outside of just structural reorganization. I would like to hear those recommendations in committee to decide the best way to realign the departments to achieve the goals we've set out to do. I have a proposed motion here that I would like my colleague, Councilmember Gil Cedillo, to consider. But before I propose that amendment to Mr. Price's motion, I'd like to hear if there's any questions or further questions or comments from Mr. Cedillo.
Mr. Chair, I think it makes sense. The thing that comes to mind is that in an endeavor like this, we should be sober and deliberate. And I don't think that that we designed the end result in that way, that we had a predetermined end result that we believed would have resolved our problems. I was impressed to hear the consultant talk about our processes as being cumbersome and convoluted. And for me, those are the problems I want to know. What is the public facing? What are the challenges that the public faces when they come to the City of Los Angeles? And how do we address those without a predetermined solution, but really what are the fundamental problems that people face and how do they deal with the city? We know that we have to be more business friendly. We have to be efficient. We have to be effective. I do believe we can change a culture through some mandates and directives by setting clearer missions, clearer goals, and clearer objectives. We have to look at what is the process that someone who comes here to do business with the city that they go through. And right now I think it's just a grab bag, and then you put your hand in the bag and you pull something, a directive out, and then you follow that, and then you do it again, and so it's never clear. These are my observations from what I hear. And so I think it's important for us to do that. This is not a delay that fears change, nor do I see this committee reticent to make change. We've voted on change today. We voted on change on the mirror ordinance. We voted on change on sidewalk dining, all those to improve the city. So I don't see this as a delay that's resisting change, but one that wants to make the right change. I think the council member had the right idea when he said measure 5 times, cut once. I'm not quite sure we want to measure 5 times. Let's just measure the right amount of times to make sure that we get it right, and then go forward with the changes that need to be made. So I'm happy to support this. It is important, though. The city attorney raised a very kind of salient point unthought of. We are integrated as a city. We gave them a directive. We need to include that in the motions, and any other related departments, any other entities that are dependent upon this change or waiting for it, that they must also know that we are doing a reset so that we can get it done right.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. And again, to recap, I think there are several things that are happening in our development processes in the city that are helping with reform to expedite, to make it more efficient. The process that we have here is a more comprehensive review that will allow us to continue on that trajectory. But what this is doing here, it's not, again, I want to underline, it's not killing that process. It's being realistic. We can't do it by January 1st. Let's give us more time. But secondly, saying, let's expand the review so that we get all possible tools at our disposal before we make that ultimate decision. We proceed on this process if the consultant comes back and says, you know what, consolidation is the best of all scenarios. But at least we want to give the consultant that flexibility to make that recommendation to us. So with that, I'd like to make an amendment to the Price-Laban motion, which states, request the city attorney to postpone preparation of ordinances relative to a new development services department as directed in Exhibit H of the 2013-14 adopted budget until the council has considered and acted on the pending joint CAO-CLA policy report relative to development services, including the related report from the management consultant. I think that's sufficient to assure the city attorney that they're holding on that until we make the final decision whether to go or not. I mean, this may go to full council, and we still may not pass, so at least until we make those decisions and we get the final report.
Correct, thank you.
Direct the Office of the City Administrative Officer to report back within 2 weeks on what actions need to be taken to ensure the departments of City Planning, Building and Safety, Transportation, Fire and Public Works, Bureau of Engineering can continue to provide development services through June 30th, 2014 as separate departments and/or functions if implementation of the new department is delayed until fiscal year 2014-15. Direct the CAO to report back on any changes that need to be made to the management consultant contract scope of services or funding to address additional issues identified in the Price-Laban motion, including but not limited to: 1. Options other than consolidation that would improve the city's development process; 2. Best practices of other large municipalities; 3. A cost-benefit analysis; 4. Pros and cons of consolidation; 5. Other viable realignment options; and 6. An implementation timeline. And finally, direct the Departments of Planning, Building and Safety, Transportation, Fire and Public Works, Bureau of Engineering to continue working with the CAO, CLA, Controller, City Attorney, and Personnel Department to implement council policy relative to development reform. So with that, is that a friendly amendment, Mr. Cedillo?
So amended.
Okay, thank you. And is there any objection to the Price-Laban motion with the amendments, Mr. Cedillo? Any objections? Or
No objections.
Okay.
So amended.
So we'll move that item to council. I understand that the Price-Laban motion is in the Budget and Finance Committee, and that has not been scheduled, but it has been expressed to us the urgency of making a decision one way or another, whether we stay with the current plan, January 1st, with the scope provided to the consultant, or if we change it through this motion, but hopefully the Budget and Finance Committee will hear that item soon, so that at least we can get it to the council floor soon. So with that, no other items on this, no other questions or comments on this item. We'll move this motion forward with these amendments. Thank you.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, I'd love to. Be nice. Good.
We adjourned?
No, we still got 2 more items. Next item. Next item.
Yes, the next item, council member, is an appeal by Juliet Cummings on behalf of the 9100 blocks of West Trasher Avenue in CD4, and she's appealing a haul route for 2,930 cubic yards at the property.
Thank you.
Staff from Building and Safety.
Good afternoon. Cora Johnson, Board Secretary for the Board of Building and Safety Commission. A haul route public hearing was held on September 10th, 2013 for the Thrasher project to export 2,930 cubic yards. There were 3 commissioners present. They voted to adopt the mitigated negative declaration and also to approve the haul route with one condition: to eliminate the Saturday hauling hours. There were 2 issues raised in opposition. One was the Saturday hauling hours, and the other issue was the consideration of the street, the condition of the street, and requesting to raise the bond amount from street services. So the board, again, voted to adopt the mitigated negative declaration and to approve the haul route.
Thank you. We'll hear first from the appellant, Dr. Juliet Cummins.
I need an administrative question answered. Since I'm here for 9 home sites and 13 homeowners, I can't explain the situation in 1 minute. I would like more time.
I'm sorry. Yes, we will provide you 5 minutes. We usually provide appellants on these matters sufficient time to state their case. Yes, 5 minutes.
Okay, because you need an explanation of what this consists of. It's an equivalent of a 2-block street. It's at the bottom of a bluff. It has 3 blind corner curves on it because it's very curvy. And the street is in a precarious position now. The city has a gold mine or a true gem They have the Roman roads and highways, thousands of miles of roads. But the city has a major problem. They cannot financing the reconstruction of these roads. We have been asking for 19 years, since shortly after January 17th, 1994, to reconstruct our street. When the street was buckled over 2 inches, it is now called an alligator street because all the berm that protects the street from water and all that so it can run down the storm drain is gone. So when it rains, it goes directly into the earth. So the reason why we're very concerned about this is because the developer is going to be here 2.5 years to 3. He is literally taking a lot of earth out of the mountain to increase the area for compatibility for a swimming pool, etc. I'm not opposed to the development. I'm only opposed to the city not being able to protect itself from getting the streets further destroyed. We're asking that the bond be raised to at least $300,000. We're also asking that no crew be allowed to park on the street. Now, Mr. Adler said that's fine with him because he has a lot of property down there. They can all park down there. We have very little parking. We have parking on one side and we have 1 lane to travel. So we only have really a 1-lane street. If we have so much parking on the street, I don't know where they're going to be, on both sides of the street. We need parking for our gardeners, for our housekeepers, for emergency plumbing, for ADT, for UPS, for FedEx, and other ones that come to service our house. So that's why we don't want any crew parking on the street. Now, I know your lawyer, I don't know, is your lawyer here? May say that this is not within the nexus. Is your lawyer here? So they don't know what that means? Of your ability to require or demand that the developer reconstruct the street according to hillside ordinances. Maybe you cannot or will not make a mitigation measure requiring that. But what I'm asking, it's like a little common law here. If we can start an issue so we can protect the streets for the city from the developers who come in with huge rigs. Already they've come in for demolition, and you know those little blue things on the street where you know where water is in case of fire? A couple of those are gone. So these heavy-duty trucks on a very, figure Zsa Zsa Gabor with all her wrinkles and all that. You know, you can't just start trying to make her new again. It's done. So we're trying to protect what street we have. We don't want further destruction of it, especially since we've been asking for 19 years for the city to reconstruct the street. So I want you, maybe you can do this. Make a resolution to the city council because that hearing comes in next week. Let's start something with developers when they come in. You know they're going to be there like 2.5 to 3 years with big rigs on our streets, which are in bad need of repair, to have them reconstruct our streets on that portion that they've been using to go back and forth with heavy rigs. So I like to make this a precedent case here so that we can get something started by your resolution or recommendation to the city to start, that maybe we can get a law made that will protect the streets in the future, if not here. So I'm trying to be, there's a lot I want to say, but I'm not going to because some of it, I know you have had it in there. This is a alligator street. It shows that it's so cracked up. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I didn't know the format. So look at that. There's no street left right now. Please try to make a new law on this. And if it is within the nexus, please have the contractor, developer do something about it. And also I want to excuse in my notes to the council any reference to 1423. That division was Bird Street Estates LLC. So please delete anything I said that would hold this Jonathan Adler responsible for what I said in there, because his is Bird Streets LLC. I apologize to Mr. Adler. I apologize to this committee. I just want to clear that up for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Adler? Jonathan, you are the property owner and permittee, right, of this?
Correct.
Okay.
First of all, officer, I'd like to present some evidence to this panel.
I also have 5 minutes on this, please.
Thank you. I'd like to address a couple of concerns in Ms. Sponsel's appeal of my haul route that was approved on September 10th. First of all, I'd like to show you a large poster of the street, Thrasher Avenue, and the street condition, they said it's an alligator street. However, I've seen many other streets in the city of Los Angeles that are in much further disrepair, and this condition of this street is not entirely bad at this image. Additionally, Ms. Sponsel says she represents the 9100 block of Thrasher Neighborhood Association. I checked city, state with the Secretary of State, and there is no certification, incorporation of this Thrasher Avenue Block Association. I do not believe that this is in existence. This is rather a individual owner who does not want construction on our street. But I'd also like to present that Ms. Sponsel lives at the address of 9170 West Thrasher, and she claims that construction has destroyed her street. Ms. Sponsel, over the past 7 or 8 years, has approximately over 30 permits, construction permits applied for at her house. The pictures provided to you, which she does not want to let my construction crews park on, she has her construction crews working on there on a daily basis. This is a picture from September 25th, taken at 10:14 a.m., where she has approximately 7 or 8 pickup trucks working on her house. By this to the council. Here's a further view. Her house is the yellow house, where I believe she's doing multiple additions, a swimming pool. Additionally, part of this haul route is approval goes hand in hand with a grading permit. We are trying to get a grading permit so that we can build a new single-family, approximately 10,000 square foot home, which is in ready-to-issue status at the LADBS after part of the previous order on this agenda here. Very complicated, but we finally got through all the hurdles. Additionally, if Ms. Sponsel wants us to repair a street that for the past 10 years she's been...
Okay, can you make sure you speak into the microphone? Just
Absolutely.
bring it down? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
I'll hold the microphone. Is it a little better? Ms. Sponsel and some of the other neighbors are partially responsible for the condition of the street. But to go ahead and attribute the blame to a new developer who's planning to do a project and having them repair that street, I think is also inappropriate. And the purpose of a haul route is to determine if the export of dirt meets guidelines, and we approve a route for the dirt to be excavated and delivered to a landfill. This has been approved, and the route has been permitted. Additionally, the neighbors had concerns about noise and what days of operation, and we were fully compliant and willing and did not oppose in an effort to be neighborly. I believe that the $50,000 bond amount is sufficient. It is part of existing policy that this is the required amount for a developer to pay based on this amount of cubic yardage. And I believe that our haul route, which was approved, should not be further appealed. It should be granted permission to proceed as planned during the 15 days of hauling that has been approved by that panel. It's the duty of the City Council to make sure that all rules that are going to be applied to one neighbor should be applied to everybody. And if Ms. Sponsel has done 10 years of construction on this site, and other neighbors have also done 10 years of pretty extensive renovations on their site, and they have workers parking on the sidewalk, our construction crews will abide by the same exact parking regulations as your workers will abide by. So I think we need to create a level playing field. And I'd like to also introduce into evidence an agreement set forth by Ms. Sponsel. I got 3 copies over here, where she would agree to dismiss this appeal if we would agree to do the city's job, which is she's complained for 19 years, to repave the street. And I highlighted the points that if we were to agree to repave the street, she would drop this appeal. She is utilizing this forum inappropriately to, I don't know how to say this, I don't want this to come out, but basically a shakedown. That if we are to do X, she will drop Y. And this is not inappropriate. This is not an appropriate use of the city's limited funds to use this forum to exploit their own personal. And I'm asking this council to kindly allow our hauling to commence and the construction within the parameters as approved for by law.
Thank you. Can we get our staff? Oh, one more speaker, right? Can you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Dr. Leslie Pam. I have lived in that neighborhood for 28 years. I'd like to present something, pictures mainly, and to the council. I've lived there for 28 years, and I'm requesting that I get a couple more minutes in the 1 minute.
Just have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Lived there for 28 years. The developers found this neighborhood 15 years ago. The house flippers found this neighborhood. We've been in a state of constant construction for 15 years. We've gone through the most amazing and horrendous experiences possible. I'm getting tired of it. I'm the guy that deals with all the contractors. I'm almost 70 years old, and I need your help today because I can't do this alone anymore. I'm hearing people say things that aren't true. I want to mention something that when the homes above were built, all the new construction, they built drains onto the street below. I don't believe those drains are done properly. It is totally eroding the street. You can see it in the pictures that I presented to you today. And when we were at the Building and Safety, their representative told us that Street Services had approved of this street for that hall. Now, my family is in the construction business. We build roads and a lot of other things. And I made a request. I'd like to see the report from Street Services that says the condition of that street can handle 9 million pounds of dirt. There are 700 hauls that have to be made. Each haul is 45,000 pounds one way, 15,000 pounds the other way. I think that the right side of that tire is going to go directly over that mess that you see down there. And I'm only asking for 2 things today from the council, needing your help. I'm going to read you a paragraph that I presented here, and I'm just going to read it out loud. On September 24th, I received a call from John Adler, the developer, who wanted to discuss our appeal of his project. At that time, he offered to pave the entire street from the cul-de-sac to the intersection of Thrasher Avenue and Oil Drive if we were willing to remove our objections. I told him that was a fair offer and asked him to put that in writing. He stated some objections about why that wouldn't happen, and that if I were to visit his other project, I would see that he would, be a good guy and make that happen. And honestly, I looked at the other things that he did, and I don't see anybody putting in a street. So, somebody's been giving you a line here, and I'm telling you that proposal was made to me on the telephone. The other thing that I would like to do is get to have you guys help us broker this out, because we do not have a report from Street Services stating that street is capable of managing that load. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, staff, if you could come up, please. In your review of this project, in terms of the number of trips, the load, would there be any additional damage to these roads?
Well, being a member of Building and Safety, we refer those items to the Department of Street Services and the Department of Transportation, and both. We received reports from both departments, and they approved the haul route, the size of the trucks, the number of trips.
So they approved them?
Yes.
And did they mark in the reports any additional damage that would be caused?
They did not put, they just put in the report that a bond amount of $50,000 would be required if there was any damage to the street.
If there's any city damage, they would be required to repair.
Correct.
Okay. So they will be required to repair. And is there a sufficient bond on hold for this?
The $50,000 bond is a standard bond
Standard.
amount for every
Okay. It's
haul route.
standard.
Yes.
That's the standard. Okay. And what happens in our processes if the damage is more than 50,000?
The city can enforce the owner to repair the streets even if it's above the $50,000. That's just the
Okay.
bond that they require them to obtain at this moment. But if there's more damage, then the city can gain that money and have the streets repaired.
Okay. And any mitigations that were provided? I know there were certain hours and days that they could only haul, correct?
Correct. They did approve the hauling hours on Monday through Friday. They actually approved Saturday, but because there was opposition on the Saturday hours, the board eliminated the Saturday hauling hours.
Okay. Okay. Anything else you'd like to share after hearing the comment?
Just one other item I'd like to add is that the staging for the hauling trucks is not allowed on the streets.
Not allowed on the streets? No. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any comments, questions, Mr. Dio?
There's my...
No. Thank you. All right, so I'll move that we deny the appeal in as much as the record states that some of the items that were raised for consideration in terms of damage, etc., the reports indicate that they will be sufficient to be repaired, and we'll deny the appeal and move this forward. Okay. Thank you. Any other items? With no
Item
objections, we'll
4 is Mr. Legrand's weekly report.
Okay, Mr. Legrand. Okay.
And then public comment.
And there are no cards for public comment. Okay, thank you very much.